So in follicular lymphoma, we now have several effective treatment options. That's great for patients, but what that means is that progression-free survival is now 7 years in the first-line setting. If we want to develop new agents and do new studies in a disease where median progression-free survival is 7 years, those trials are going to take even longer than that, 8 to 10 years. So we need an earlier endpoint in order to facilitate drug development, get our trials done faster, get the patients the treatments that they need more quickly. The accepted regulatory standard for first-line follicular lymphoma is progression-free survival, which I mentioned is a median of about 7 years. So that's a long time. So we needed an endpoint that would be available more quickly. After a lot of preliminary exploration looking at observational data and results of single trials, we noticed that patients who had a complete response that was a durable complete response appeared to have good outcomes. 30 months was chosen because the standard treatment in first-line follicular lymphoma is 6 months of induction therapy and 24 months of maintenance therapy. So 30 months is the time at which the standard therapy is complete, so it seems to be a reasonable time to look, and our preliminary data suggested that would be a promising time to look, and also clearly 30 months is a lot shorter than 7 years, so it would give us the opportunity to shorten our trials substantially. So we conducted a meta-analysis of completed trials from around the world. We were able to assemble data from 13 clinical trials in over 3,800 patients, and what we found was that the difference between a control group and an experimental group, so testing a new therapy, on the endpoint of 30-month complete response was an excellent predictor of the longer-term progression-free survival endpoints, thus making us feel confident that if we did a new trial and used 30-month complete response rate as the endpoint, if we saw a difference between two treatments, and we found a new treatment that worked on that endpoint, we could be confident that it would eventually result in excellent long-term outcomes for progression-free survival. So our conclusion really is that this early endpoint, 30-month complete response rate in first-line follicular lymphoma, is an appropriate primary endpoint for future trials in this setting. So 30 months is an important time point for patients. We did find that patients who are doing very well in complete response after 30 months have excellent long-term prognosis. But the treatment is done at that time, and so it really isn't going to affect the treatment of any patients today. What this will allow, though, is for us to do clinical trials and use this new endpoint and have an answer much more quickly. So the hope is that if we can use this endpoint, we'll be able to more quickly demonstrate the efficacy of new treatments. This also is being submitted to regulatory agencies in both the United States and Europe with the hope of formal validation, formal approval of this endpoint for new trials going forward. So the impact is not so much for patients today because, again, the treatment really has completed at the 30-month time point, but what we hope is that this will allow us to do trials more quickly and more efficiently in the future, again, making those treatments available to future patients more quickly.